In my past life, my sister and I were adopted separately. She was taken in by a wealthy man with strict rules as a substitute for his deceased daughter. She lived in constant fear of losing what she had and eventually passed away in depression. I was adopted into a family of scholars, but I was seriously ill. The family was deeply in debt and my adopted parents divorced. In the end, I jumped off a high-rise building. When I opened my eyes again, my sister and I were back on the day of adoption. The moment our eyes met, no words were needed. We passed each other by and walked towards completely different lives. We are the blooming hydrangeas. Even if we part briefly, having fulfilled my sigh, we will meet again eventually. Reborn at the age of 7. My sister, who was snuggling in the arms of the wealthy couple and acting coquettously, suddenly fell silent. She timidly looked back at me. The corners of her eyes still teemed with a hint of lingering redness. The moment our eyes met, I knew in my heart. She was reborn too. My sister and I are identical twins. Similar in appearance but opposite in character. She is lively and cheerful, eager to be in the spotlight among people, while I am introverted and taciturn, preferring to be alone in quiet places. In our past life, my sweet-talking sister was spotted at a glance by the Magnus family, a prominent family. Before being taken into the luxury car, she made a solemn pinky promise with me, "Sister, I'll come back to see you often." Her clear eyes were full of reluctance. But little did we know that this glance would be our eternal farewell. I stood at the intersection every day until my legs went weak. But instead of my sister, I was led away by a woman with ink stains on her sleeves. "Would you like to come home with me?" Looking at her gentle smile, I nodded instinctively. Unfortunately, heading Faslana, I didn't embrace a new life. Instead, I stepped into a new hell. The Beatrice family was a family of scholars. They adopted me because Beatrice had a hidden illness but longed to have a child by her side. She poured her love into cultivating me. But I missed the college entrance examination due to unbearable abdominal pain. The physical examination result was a malignant tumor. That pale medical examination form completely shattered my dream of getting into a top-tier university. Uninterrupted chemotherapy emptied my mother's savings. She went from door to door, begging for money, and even gave up her pride to be a tutor and teach online courses. The medical expenses she painstakingly raised were all embezzled and transferred by my father and his mistress. The two of them had a huge fight, creating a ruckus. On the day of the divorce, my father pointed at me and spat viciously. "All this is because you brought this jinx home. I've always said she's a damned money loser. Extremely unlucky." My mother shouted at him with a cold face, ordering him to get out. She hugged me tightly and repeated over and over again, "Don't be afraid. Mom will definitely keep you alive." But I'm not stupid. I knew it was hard for her to get the money back from my father in a short time. I knew she was being cursed by debt collectors every day and had turned white-haired overnight. Later, while lying in the hospital bed, I received my sister's suicide note. It was passed on to me by her younger brother. I didn't know how he found me. And he didn't explain either. In that suicide note, my sister described the suffocating family atmosphere in the Magnus family. My sister, who was attached to her family and eager for love, was treated harshly everywhere in the strict Magnus family. No matter how hard she tried, her parent eyes were always filled with utter disappointment. She fell asleep to the sound of her parents' sighs, with her pillow wet with tears. At her 18th birthday banquet, she made mistakes in the piano piece she had practiced countless times. When she fled the stage in a hurry, she heard her parents' whispered conversation, "Sure enough, no matter how similar her features are, she can never compare to Lumina." This sentence shattered my sister's last psychological defense. The moment her parents said that she was just a substitute for their deceased daughter, all the love she had once held became a bitterly ironic joke. My sister, who already suffered from severe depression, swallowed a whole bottle of sleeping pills and committed suicide on her birthday. The words at the end of the suicide note, blurred by tears, read, "Sorry. I broke the promise. Sister. Happy birthday to you. May you be happy." There was a bank card inserted in the suicide note, and the password was our shared birthday. There were 3 million yuan in the card, just enough to pay off my mother's debts. I didn't want to be a burden to her anymore. That night, I escaped from the hospital and jumped off a high-rise building. When I opened my eyes again, we were both back on the day of adoption. This time, my sister suddenly broke free from Mrs. Kiao's embrace and hid behind me, gently tugging at the corner of my clothes. Don't go. They're adopting children just to replicate their dead daughter one-to-one. They won't love us at all. But I had no other choice. To cure the tumor in my body, the Magnus family was my only hope. Seeing a hint of embarrassment in Mrs. Kiao's smile, I gently squeezed my sister's fingers. I'll come back to see you often. Remember to wait for me at the intersection. As soon as I finished speaking, my sister let go of the corner of my clothes she was holding tightly. There was still worry in her eyes, but she nodded resolutely. Okay. If I don't wait for you to come back, I'll go find you. I raised the corners of my mouth and hooked her finger. It's a deal. Then, I turned around, walked forward, and obediently took Mrs. Kiao's hand. Auntie, I'll be very obedient. Can you take me home? The Magnus family couple looked at each other and finally led me to the luxury car that my sister had taken in the past life. Through the glass, my sister waved at me. Even if we embark on completely different lives, we will meet again. After being adopted by the Magnus family, I changed my name to Jocelyn. At the family dinner on the day I first entered the house, Mom introduced the names of the family members one by one. Dad was Magnus, Mom was Ophelia, and there was also a younger brother named Phoenix. From today on, she's your sister. Remember to show some respect. Mom glanced at Phoenix slightly, her tone gentle but with an undeniable air. Your sister has had a long journey home. Don't you know how to pour her a cup of tea? I was almost choked while stuffing food into my mouth. Only then did I realize that because I was so nervous, my teacup was already empty when only half of the dishes were served. Phoenix's hand, which was picking up food, paused, and then he picked up the teapot. I hurriedly said, no need. I can do it myself. Before I could finish speaking, the tea was splashed all over my face. The cold tea dripped down along my hair. Phoenix said coldly, I don't have a sister picked up from some remote place. The dining table instantly became so quiet that a pin drop could be heard. Mom looked at my dress splashed with water stains, put down her chopsticks, and said, take her in and change her clothes. The maid called me in a low voice to follow her into the room, while Dad directly took out the ruler from the bookshelf and grabbed Phoenix's palm. All these years of tutoring, have they gone to waste? He raised the ruler, and with a swishing sound, a swollen red mark immediately appeared on Phoenix's palm. Phoenix bit his lips tightly, his eyes filled with tears. But he stubbornly said, I don't want a new sister. She's a fake and doesn't deserve to enter our house. I clearly heard the sound of the ruler breaking. Phoenix couldn't finish his dinner. His fingers were so swollen that he couldn't hold the chopsticks, and he was punished to stand facing the wall and reflect on his behavior. During the punishment, Mom didn't even give him a glance. Instead, she closely watched my words and deeds. When I reached for the sweet and sour pork for the third time, she quietly pressed down on my chopsticks. Eat more steamed fish. It's healthier than fried food. She leaned over and whispered to the maid. And then the plate of sweet and sour pork was taken away. She still smiled and picked up food for me. Every dish was relatively light in taste. She watched me finish the food in my bowl and then asked, is it to your taste? Her gentle tone made me shiver involuntarily. I suddenly thought of my sister's suicide note in the past life. She said that her parents would haggle over the strands of hair that fell during dinner, force her to swallow food she didn't like, and control her clothes and hairstyle. Her words and deeds were restricted by rules. Only by acting as the good child in her parents' hearts could she get rewards. All her true feelings were shattered against the impenetrable walls. Her parents' iron-fisted control made my sister almost suffocate and suffer terribly. I secretly sighed in my heart. Fortunately, I just want to survive and don't expect love from my parents. I'll play the role of a good child as stipulated in the agreement and let them support me until I reach adulthood. It's a clearly priced deal. And it's a sure win situation. Hiding the emotions in my eyes, I raised the corners of my mouth at Mom. It's delicious. Thank you, Mom. I didn't miss the flash of a smile in her eyes. This dinner ended with Phoenix's soft sobs. I secretly kept the dessert after the meal, wrapped it up, and stuffed it into Phoenix's hands while he was standing in punishment. Here you are. You hardly ate anything during dinner. I don't want you to starve all night. He was slightly stunned when he heard this. And then he wiped away the tears on his cheeks fiercely, clenched his fists, and gritted his teeth. Who wants your fake pity? You'll leave this house sooner or later. Mom and Dad have me and that's enough. What, Jocelyn? You don't deserve to be called sister. You're a fake. I listened quietly as he vented. Took out the ointment from my pocket, held his trembling palm, and applied it to his palm. In my past life, I had met him once in front of the hospital bed. He seemed indifferent when he handed me the suicide note, but I heard his sobs through the hospital door. In his past life, he must not have disliked my sister. Otherwise, why would he go to so much trouble to find me, just to deliver a dead person's suicide note? Even though I was very gentle, Phoenix still cried out in pain. Seeing his sorry state, I couldn't help but persuade him. Why do you have to go against Mom and Dad? In the end, you'll only end up with nothing but a beating. I don't care. Anyway, having fulfilled my obsession, you can't stay in our house. I already have a sister and I don't welcome you. He mumbled, determined to drive me away. But I had a reason I had to stay. Phoenix. No matter how much you hate me, I won't leave. Hearing me speak in a serious tone, Phoenix opened his mouth but then closed it, tightly pressing his lips together. There's a time bomb in my body. Instead of going back to the orphanage to wait for death, staying in the Magnus family is my only way out. You hate me for taking sister in Yua's place. But I just want a shelter where I can have enough to eat and wear. Looking straight into Phoenix's confused eyes, I said firmly, even if I have to act as someone irrelevant. Even if Mom and Dad don't love me. I finally grasped the opportunity to be adopted by the Magnus family. I won't let go no matter what. Phoenix was uncharacteristically silent for a moment, then let out a long sigh. If you insist on staying, you can go to the room on the far right of the second-floor corridor. That was the room my sister lived in before she passed away. It remains the way it was when she was alive. The key to the room is hidden in the compartment of the drawer in the bookcase. He paused, then lowered his eyes and said, I hope you won't regret it. Thank you. I softly thanked him and then turned to walk up the stairs to the second floor. My parents had customized a detailed schedule for me, taking advantage of a break during tutoring. I fumbled around the hidden compartment of the drawer, insert the key in a book, and took it away. The entire villa was equipped with surveillance cameras. The pitch-black lenses were like airtight eyes, and I had no idea when they would open and record my every move. In my sister's suicide note, she had mentioned the diary of my parents' original daughter, Lumina. That diary would be the key for me to stay in the Magnus family. The sooner I got it, the closer I would be to their deceased daughter in my parents' hearts. The love they had owed Lumina would all be compensated to Jocelyn. In the early morning, I groped my way along the wall to the room on the far right of the second floor. There was a thin layer of dust on the doorknob. Through the faint moonlight, I could barely make out the furnishings in the room. This was the only room without surveillance. The diary was placed in the most conspicuous place on the desk. Apparently, having fulfilled my obsession, the owner of the room was not worried about the diary being peeked at. On the dust-covered cover was written the girl's name, Lumina. She was the daughter my parents could never forget. I flipped to the last page, and the words on it made me frown. Starting from today, I'm going to be hospitalized. It's a pity that I'll miss my birthday, and I won't be able to play the piano piece I've been preparing for a long time. Lumina had passed away prematurely due to a terminal illness. Her illness had deteriorated even faster, catching me even more off guard. Across time and space, I couldn't help but feel a bit of pity for her, as if we were kindred spirits. And when I finished reading the whole diary, this feeling of pity became even stronger. A flower that was in full bloom had withered in its prime. She was gentle, kind, and so outstanding that her peers could hardly catch up. Compared to Phoenix, who was spoiled, she was more like a work of art that combined the shining points of her parents. No wonder she could become the pride that her parents could never forget. and they even adopted children to replicate her. Closing the diary, I tiptoed back to my room. I knew that only by putting in double the effort could I stand shoulder to shoulder with her. But I wouldn't back down. In my previous life, I was also an elite cultivated by Beatrice with all her efforts. When it came to learning ability, I was confident that I wouldn't lose to anyone. The piano piece that my sister played with mistakes, I would play it to a perfect end for her. In the early morning, before the sky was bright, I was already sitting in front of the piano, starting to practice. Stretching out my hands, I hummed the melody softly, and my fingertips danced on the black and white keys. The stumbling notes gradually connected into a tune. When the light illuminated the room, I was playing the last few bars of the piano piece to end. The door panel was silently pushed open a crack. When I met the eyes through the crack, a sudden sense of nervousness made my fingers miss a note. Dad let out a faint sigh. Before he closed the door, I suddenly bit my tongue. The intense pain made the corners of my eyes turn red, and two teardrops rolled down. The tears fell on the keys. Looking at the sheet music through the mist of tears, I successfully played the remaining part. Out of the corner of my eye, I noticed that Dad hadn't left yet. I picked up a pencil and marked the note I had played wrong on the sheet music and deliberately raised my hand to wipe the corner of my eye. Don't be too sad. You've just started learning the piano. And being able to play to this extent is already a great improvement. Dad, who was standing behind me, patted my shoulder gently. And his tone was so gentle that it was completely different from yesterday. He looked at me with a complex expression. Clearly, my shadow was reflected in his eyes. But they were filled with sorrow that I couldn't understand. Too similar. He murmured to himself. When she practiced this piano piece, she also liked to hum the tune. When she played the wrong note in front of me, she was so nervous that she shed tears too. Lumina, did you miss Mom and Dad so much that you specially sent her to accompany us? Dad, I called out timidly, holding his finger and promising, I'll practice this piece until I'm proficient today. Don't be disappointed in me. Okay? Dad's eyes were slightly red. He put his arm around my shoulder and gently patted my back. Okay. I believe in you. Little NUO is the best and will definitely be able to do it. This compliment that my sister had tried so hard to get in her previous life was easily obtained by me, just because of two teardrops. And the piece that she practiced until the early morning to master. Dad responded with an indifferent question. Such a simple piano piece. And you actually need to practice it all night? The Magnus family couple didn't need a perfect child. What they needed was the perfect Lumina. As long as they could see Lumina's shadow in me, all my minor flaws could be ignored. Missing someone can beautify all the flaws of the deceased and turn her into a perfect god. No wonder. No matter how well my sister did, she could never satisfy our parents. Because my sister always played herself, not their deceased daughter. Another dinner. The servants prepared the pulsed dinner dessert as usual. It was a small cake decorated with strawberries. I had never seen such a delicate pastry in the orphanage, and couldn't help but take a few extra glances. That stack of pastries was immediately placed in front of me. Mom smiled and said, "If you want to eat, just go ahead." The words "thank you" were already on the tip of my tongue. But Phoenix beside me spoke first. "Why does only sister get to eat? I want to eat too." He dug out the part filled with strawberries and gave me a provocative glance. I calmly took a sip of soup and declined. "Thank you, Mom, but I don't like sweets." "Why don't you give it to Phoenix?" Mom's eyes widened in surprise. And I nervously clenched my chopsticks. Lumina had mentioned in her diary that she had a weak stomach and usually didn't touch cold food. Nor did she like desserts. I'm afraid Dad had revealed my performance during piano practice. So Mom was deliberately testing whether I really had Lumina's shadow. Fortunately, having fulfilled my obsession, Phoenix had preemptively stopped me from speaking. "He's right." Mom gave me a deep look and said softly, "You really are like her." Her voice, which usually showed no emotion, changed tone. And even her hand holding the chopsticks was slightly trembling. "She is a forbidden word that everyone in the family keeps silent about," Phoenix whispered to me. "Every time she is mentioned, Mom can't help but shed tears. As time goes by, no one dares to touch this scar anymore." He tugged at the corner of his mouth, self-deprecating lie. and his smile was uglier than crying. If I weren't so useless, Mom and Dad wouldn't be stuck in the past and tried every means to adopt a girl who looks similar to sister. And I wouldn't have dragged you into this mess. His voice became more and more depressed. I subconsciously rubbed his head. Phoenix. This is not your fault. Believe that I can solve everything. Okay? You've only been here for 2 days and you're already acting like a big sister. Phoenix complained. But his ears instantly turned red. His appearance always reminded me of my sister. It had been so long since we separated. I wonder if she had been adopted by Beatrice? When I was filled with mixed feelings, I suddenly saw Mom secretly pulling down her cuff. Her small gesture was too familiar. And I blurted out, Mom, is your wrist injured? I seen too. Meeting Mom's panicked gaze, I hesitated for a moment and finally said, see the scab scar? Mom, it must hurt. Right? Don't hurt yourself for Jocelyn. Okay? After I finished speaking, I realized that these words seemed familiar. Last night, in Lumina's diary, Lumina had also had a similar conversation with Mom. I don't want Mom to hurt herself because of me. At that time, the young her stopped the scar left by Mom's caesarean section, and wrote this sentence crookedly with her childish handwriting. It was just a childish remark, she said casually. But it instantly made Mom freeze in place. The chopsticks and bowl in her hand fell to the ground. But she didn't seem to notice. She waved to me to come forward and suddenly hugged me tightly. I stood on tiptoe to hug her, letting her cry silently in my arms. Her tears soaked my clothes. Lumina, you're back. Right? Don't blame Mom. Okay? Mom will never let go of your hand again. The hall fell into silence. I looked at Phoenix's worried gaze and gently shook my head. Mom's wrist clearly showed signs of self-harm. I had also tried cutting my wrists, and I was all too familiar with her attempts to cover it up. I patted her back, just like in my previous life when I hugged Beatrice, who was crying non-stop, and softly said the last words that Lumina hadn't been able to say. Mom, I've never blamed you. Since that hysterical crying, Mom had completely regarded me as her lost and found youngest daughter. She no longer demanded that I play every piano piece perfectly. Nor did she restrict my words and deeds. The rules that had trapped my sister to death in her previous life were relaxed because of that crying fit. I still went to Lumina's room every night, trying to figure out her likes and dislikes by reading her diary. I didn't want to leave this home. Nor would I cross the line. Unconsciously, heading fulfilled my sigh. I got used to a light diet. Got used to that schedule detailed to the minute. And even got used to writing a half-hour diary before going to bed. From junior high school to high school, my younger brother, who always loved to compete with me everywhere, shed his youthful naivete. The little tail who used to stick behind me could now easily pick up items that I couldn't reach even on tiptoe. With the best educational resources, I was successfully admitted to the same top-tier high school as in my previous life and chose the art class. Mom had some objections. She hoped that I could choose an academy with a more elegant or artistic atmosphere. But she still gave in to my insistence. In this school, as expected, I met my sister. She was standing in the office, head held high. 3 male classmates next to her were all bruised. And the arrogant parents were relentlessly asking the teacher for an explanation. After a long separation, my sister no longer had the timidity she had in the orphanage. She put her hands on her hips and cursed, Malcolm, you coward. You only dared to take your anger out on my mom. Where's the strength you had when you hit her at home? Now that your daughter is being bullied, you're just nodding and bowing like a coward? Malcolm was the name of my sister's adoptive father. Being called by his name directly, Malcolm's face turned as black as the bottom of a pot. He gritted his teeth and warned my sister to shut up, but my sister didn't give him any face at all. You still have the nerve to tell me to shut up? When I was being bullied, you were only focused on playing cards and stopped my mom saying that it was normal for classmates to have friction and that one hand can't clap. My sister suddenly slapped the table and glared at the male classmates. Is it loud enough now? Do you still dare to spread rumors about me? I should really tear your mouths apart. The office fell silent. Even the parents of the classmates who had been making a fuss for an explanation were scolded harshly. Looking at the familiar faces of the male classmates, I couldn't help but think of their arrogant mouths in my previous life. Obviously, having fulfilled my slay. They were the ones who spread rumors first. But Dad kept asking me to back down. When I couldn't bear it anymore and had an argument with them. The first thing Malcolm said when he came to the office was to scold me. "You're a girl and you actually started the fight first. Aren't you ashamed? Hurry up and apologize to others lest you waste my money to clean up your mess." Arrogant to the weak and cowardly to the strong. He had the blood of bullying the weak and fearing the strong flowing in his bones, and always only dared to raise his fist at me and Beatrice. Now, my sister had really avenged me. "Aurora. After all. You were the one who started the fight. This matter." The teacher pushed his glasses hesitantly, and was about to persuade when I suddenly said, "Teacher. It's said that one should educate people before teaching knowledge. Is this how the top-ranked high school in the province deals with campus bullying? Not seriously at all?" "Exactly. They've been humiliating the girls in our class in private. And they've been spreading lewd rumors about the girls in the class group. They said that our students are all big-breasted and brainless. And that they'll end up making borderline porn videos in the future. Caught red-handed for spreading lewd rumors online." The male students' expressions were extremely unnatural. They became angry from embarrassment and tried to argue, but my sister immediately cut off their excuses. "I've taken screenshots as evidence. You're such cowards. No wonder you're all golden needles," a derogatory term for men with small penises. "If you have the guts to do it, you should have the guts to admit it. You're not real men." This sentence made the male students' faces turn red with anger. The teacher also firmly stated her position. Spreading lewd rumors online is an illegal act. If you had any sense, you'd know you can't talk nonsense. Aurora was indeed wrong to hit someone. She'll be suspended from school for 2 days according to the school regulations. As for the matter of you all spreading rumors and bullying, I'll check the surveillance footage specifically. She looked coldly at the three of them who were cowering like quails and said unhappily, "If what Aurora said is true, the school will deal with it seriously according to the situation. At the least, you'll get a demerit. At the worst, you'll be expelled. The school will never tolerate such serious incidents." When closing the office door, my sister followed me all the way, took my arm, and pestered me, "You're doing well in the Magnus family." "Well, I'm short on money right now. Good sister, can you give me some spare cash?" I rolled my eyes at her, and let her empty my wallet of banknotes. After getting enough money, she stuffed a note into my wallet instead, my contact information. "When I win the International Mathematical Olympiad, I'll pay you back with interest." On that note, besides the phone number, there was also a line of small characters, "Be careful of Vaxor." I remember that my sister also mentioned this name in her suicide note in the past life. When my sister made a mistake in her piano performance and was in a deep depression, Vaxor became the salvation in her life, pulling her out of the mire. Vaxor was also a victim of a plutocratic family. Their shared suffering made their relationship heat up quickly. After that, when my sister realized that she was a substitute, she chose to run towards a new home with Vaxor. However, things didn't go as she wished. She was once again shattered in a scam. Vaxor filmed their first night together and sent the video to the Magnus family, extorting millions in betrothal gifts. The person she once adored became the last straw that broke the camel's back. With no way out, my sister took pills and committed suicide. I narrowed my eyes, looked at the milk tea that Vaxor gave me on the table, and without hesitation, threw it into the trash can. It was disgustingly dirty. I was blocked by street thugs. They menacingly cornered me against the wall, their lecherous eyes fixed on my chest. It was a rather strange experience. Usually, I'm picked up and dropped off by a private car. The fact that they could accurately pick the time when I was on my way home by car must mean that there was an employer behind them giving specific instructions. "Little girl, don't be in such a hurry. Why not stay and play with us? Big brothers?" Amin grabbed my wrist tightly, and the smell of cigarettes in his mouth made me feel nauseous. "No, thanks." I grasped his wrist in return and, expressionless, heading so filled my sigh, kicked him in the jaw. I do know a couple of basic self-defense moves. I'm allergic to trash. "Don't touch me with your dirty hands." The thug was caught off guard. He bit his tongue and blood oozed out. He grimaced in pain. The thugs surrounding me all changed their expressions. One of them reached into his pocket. Judging from his posture, he was hiding something. Without thinking, I turned around and tried to run. But then I heard a shout from a distance. "What are you doing? Hands up." The police arrived so quickly that it further confirmed my suspicion. I'm afraid someone deliberately arranged this ambush just to play the hero and save the beauty at the right time. While I was lost in thought, someone suddenly put their arm around my waist. "Jocelyn, are you okay?" Before he could finish speaking, I instinctively raised my arm and elbowed him in the chest. I've always been averse to close contact. Even Phoenix gets beaten when he's being naughty, let alone a stranger. The person behind me groaned in pain and immediately bent over, holding his stomach. I turned around, and as expected, it was Vexor. His fair face turned bright red, and his breathing became a little rapid. I reached out my hand, pretending to be apologetic. "Sorry. I was too nervous," and reacted instinctively. "Are you okay?" I blinked and drawled his name, Vexor. This call was rather ambiguous. Vexor reluctantly raised the corners of his mouth and waved his hand, trying to hold himself together. "It's okay. I saw someone following you on the road, so I called the police right away. I saw them getting handsy with you. Are you hurt?" His eyes were full of affection. He held my wrist worriedly. My wrist was scratched when I was struggling. And seeing this, he insisted on taking me to the hospital. Just as I was declining, Vexor's hand holding mine was grabbed. I even heard the crisp sound of his finger bones being pinched. "Please. If you have something to say, go somewhere else. Don't touch her casually." Phoenix pulled with such force that Vexor stumbled to steps. Vexor withdrew his hand unhappily and frowned. "If she doesn't like me, she'll let go herself. It's none of your business." The smell of gunpowder spread between the two. Phoenix stood in front of me with a fake smile. "It's not that she doesn't like you. It's that I'm particularly disgusted when others touch my sister casually. When I see it, I can't help but want to punch them in the face. With such harsh words. Don't you have some dirty thoughts about her? Jocelyn? I advise you to keep your distance from this lunatic. The way he looks at you." Vexor moved his wrist and deliberately emphasized his tone provocatively. "It's really disgusting." The next second, Phoenix directly punched Vexor in the face. This fight eventually turned into a one-sided beating by Phoenix. Vexor covered his head and lay on the ground, howling in pain. When I pulled them apart, Vexor's nose was bleeding profusely, and I sent him to the hospital. The part of his plan that was supposed to make our relationship heat up had now turned into a farce. Before leaving, Phoenix didn't forget to draw his thumb across his neck and warn, "If you dare do it again, I'll kill you. Your brother is really not someone to mess with." Vexor was extremely angry. But I couldn't help laughing. My fault. I've spoiled him so much that he's become lawless. "Vexor, don't take it personally." Hearing this, Vexor was silent for a moment. Then he advised, "Jocelyn, are you really willing to be trapped in the Magnus family for the rest of your life? No matter how outstanding you are, you're just an adopted daughter. Even if Phoenix is nowhere near as good as you, the family business will only go to him. I'm also from a plutocratic family. I can understand the pain of being ignored and unvalued by my parents. If you can figure it out, I can take you away and we can start our own private business." He spoke sincerely, but the only thought in my mind was, "Sister, was this how he deceived your sincere feelings with his sweet words in the past life? I'll think about it carefully." I didn't give Vexor a promise in this conversation, but I also didn't crush his hope. I'm really looking forward to seeing how far he'll go for the millions in betrothal gifts. Counting the days on my fingers. My 18th birthday is getting closer and closer. I went to the hospital for an examination. The cancer cells hadn't spread, and the doctor advised me to start treatment as soon as possible. Everything in this life is still in time. But when I wanted to give the test report to my parents, I heard their conversation. The performances that loom in a mist back then must be made up for as much as possible. Decline all business. Everything should focus on the birthday party. My daughter's coming-of-age ceremony should be grander than anyone else's. I want to make up for Loom and his absent birthday. Clutching the test report tightly, I closed the door crack and sat back in front of the piano. Taking a deep breath, I raised my hands. And the piano music poured out violently, expressing my emotions. I didn't need to look at the sheet music. This piece was already engraved in my heart. Before the storm comes, there is silence. I planned a live stream called Searching for the Piano. I played the pieces requested by fans on the pianos in various subway stations, recording the reactions of passers-by. My excellent playing skills attracted many fans who came especially for me. Whenever someone asked me the reason for planning this project, I would always explain with a smile. It's to fulfill my sister's wish. Her wish was to play on every piano and let everyone hear her performance. At the end of each live stream, I would play an unnamed tune. The clean and soothing melody was like falling winter snow. This song was the first melody composed by Lumina. In the live stream, I tried my best to visit the towns named by fans until the final performance arrived. It was the concert that my parents held for me at the coming-of-age ceremony. Don't be nervous. We all believe in you. Mom patted my shoulder gently. Her voice was trembling. Although she was saying words of comfort, she was even more nervous than me. She had been looking forward to this performance for almost 10 years. Is she the piano prodigy who became famous at a young age in the Magnus family? Didn't she just recover from a serious illness and get out of the hospital? She's not the same one. After their daughter died, the Magnus family went crazy, visiting all the orphanages and specifically bringing back an adopted daughter who looks similar. She really does look alike. If their daughter had grown up, she might have looked like this. As I walked up the steps, listening to the whispers from the audience, I suddenly understood why my sister had made mistakes. She was so eager to prove that she wasn't Lumina and that she could do better than Lumina. From the moment I appeared, everyone was comparing me with the late Lumina. The slightest mistake would give people something to talk about. As expected, the biological bloodline is more outstanding. The adopted daughter just looks similar. She can't compare to the real genius. It was just a few steps, but it felt like I had walked through 10 years in Lumina's shadow. The girl sat in front of the piano, with a faint smile on her bloodless face. Can I really replace you? Should I really let you be forgotten like this? Sister Jocelyn. Come on. Phoenix, sitting in the front row, clapped his hands vigorously. His applause overwhelmed the rustling noises. In the dark crowd, only his eyes were hot and sincere, like dancing candles. He called me Sister Jocelyn, not Lumina. In this life, someone remembers my real name. I've reached my current height because of myself, not because of Lumina's title. I no longer need to look at her back. At this moment, I stand side by side with her. I sat down in front of the piano. After taking a deep breath, the moment my fingertips started to move, I felt as if I was back in those countless late nights when I practiced the piano until dawn. I've never lost to her. This piano piece won thunderous applause. Amidst the praises, I heard compliments specifically for Jocelyn. Her name is Jocelyn, right? The Magnus family is really good at raising children, having cultivated two piano prodigies one after another. Her playing technique is so similar to that famous pianist who went viral on the internet. Is it the same person? It's said that a renowned pianist has specifically asked to take her as an apprentice. And she's also been admitted to a top-tier art academy. Truly worthy of being a child of the Magnus family. Even without the Magnus family blood, she still stands out. When I stepped off the stage, I still felt dazed. Mom happily hugged me, and along with Dad, spared no effort in praising me one after another. At the banquet, people kept coming to toast and bless me. I deliberately replaced alcohol with tea, but still felt dizzy for no reason when eating the cake. This state was very dangerous. I gave Phoenix a look, and he immediately and subtly persuaded our parents, leaving me some space alone. As soon as I hid in the private room, someone pushed open the unlocked door. Jocelyn, what have you decided? Daxor's face had double images, and his voice was as low as if wrapped in a sponge. Amidst the dizziness, a sharp pain also surged in my abdomen. I covered my forehead and said impatiently, "Get out." This weak scolding only earned me a chuckle from Daxor. He locked the door and started to unbutton his collar. Jocelyn, I gave you a chance. I originally wanted to treat you gently. But you're just like Phoenix. Unable to tell good from bad. The abdominal pain made cold sweat break out on my forehead. I curled up my body and watched as Vexor gradually approached and grabbed my wrist. My vision became more and more blurred. His fingers pinched my chin. And the smell of cigarettes on his fingertips reminded me of the smell of Malcolm's coat in my previous life. It was pungent, stinky, and annoying. The door slammed against the wall. And I heard a furious roar, "Vexor! You reckless bastard!" Thank goodness. Phoenix wasn't late. "Jocelyn. How are you? Don't be afraid. Mom and Dad are here." Mom hugged me in a panic and shouted with a broken voice, "Hurry and send her to the hospital." I struggled to open my eyes. In the chaotic crowd, a girl wearing a top hat took the doll on the bedside table. The doll's eyes glowed with a faint red light. My tense nerves relaxed. And my consciousness completely sank into darkness. In my dream, I seemed to hear my parents call my name for the first time. "Jocelyn. Please open your eyes and look at Mom and Dad. Please don't be in danger. Okay? We've already lost Lumina. We can't lose you too." I fulfilled her last wish. Mom and Dad. After nearly 10 years of acting. Is it enough to exchange for my life? When I woke up, the bedside table was filled with blessing sackets, jade stones, and tokens of various religions, gathered together in a rather spectacular sight. Mom cried and called your name all night. She was almost on her knees, begging the doctor to save you. Phoenix sat by the bedside, feeding me fruit, fortunately, having fulfilled my obsession. "You survived this disaster. The tumor didn't spread. And with adoptive chemotherapy, you'll recover. Remember to keep a positive attitude." I blinked and stared blankly at his chapped lips and slightly swollen cheeks. "Did you lose the fight?" "Bullshit. Look at my achievements. If it weren't for someone pulling me away, I would have crippled him on the spot." On Phoenix's phone screen, Vexor's face was swollen like a pig's head. And 2 of his teeth were knocked out. It was a pitiful sight. Mom and Dad gave a stern warning. If he dares to use such despicable tricks as drugging, he won't get away with it. I gave him a thumbs up and sincerely praised. "So fierce. I also met your twin sister at the police station. Thanks to her for taking the doll that Vexor hid at the scene. There was a hidden camera inside, which recorded his entire criminal process. He really shot himself in the foot. Serves him right." Phoenix gloated. But I stopped smiling. My sister naturally knew where Vexor hid the monitor in her previous life. After all, she had experienced that pain firsthand. When I opened my phone, there was a huge increase in private messages. When I clicked in, I found that the recording of my live stream had gone viral on the trending topics. The content had nothing to do with the performance itself. It was said that a couple who stopped to watch the performance during the live stream was exposed by the man's wife for having an affair. The man who was due XXZ on the internet was Malcolm. I raised the corners of my mouth. I deliberately chose the mall where Malcolm picked up his mistress as the performance venue and played all love songs. It was to encourage this underground couple to be overcome by passion and the romantic atmosphere. "Beatrice. This time, you won't have me as a burden anymore and can leave without hesitation. For me, having fulfilled my obsession. For my sister. And for yourself. Don't let them get away." It was said that the female professor who was cheated on sued her husband without hesitation, claiming back the property spent on the mistress during their marriage. The adopted daughter even collected a lot of evidence of her father's domestic violence to support her mother. The entire lawsuit process was updated on the internet. And many netizens supported her divorce and actively offered legal assistance. Compared to the desperate situation of being deeply in debt in my previous life, I could imagine how powerfully Beatrice would kick Malcolm out of the house at this moment. I couldn't wait to call my sister. In less than half an hour, she appeared at the hospital, holding the strawberry cake I liked. "The old bastard is finished. His affair with the mistress was exposed in the company. Now he's lost his job. And the mistress is unwilling to pay back the money. He's in deep debt. Thanks to your live stream, this matter has blown up. And he doesn't even have a chance to turn things around." I fist bumped her and smiled. "Same here. Thanks for the monitor you provided. Vexor is probably going to end up in jail." We looked at each other. And she suddenly hugged me and whispered, "Sis, you've worked hard." She held a bank card in her hand. The money she borrowed from me before. With principal and interest. I hugged her. And my eyes couldn't help but turn red. "You too. You've worked hard, Aurora." We both knew that our paths hadn't been easy. The chemotherapy process was very painful. Mom specially pushed aside her work and stayed by my side wholeheartedly. During this time, she told me a lot about Lumina. I listened quietly. At the end, Mom stroked my head and said seriously, "Jocelyn, after you fainted, your father and I had a long talk. We owe you an apology. We adopted you, but didn't give you enough sense of security and forced you to become what we imagined. We're sorry to Lumina. And we're sorry to you." At that moment, the shell that I was used to using to guard against the outside world finally cracked a little. After spanning to lifetimes and decades, I finally waited for this apology they owed my sister. Fortunately, hadn't fulfilled my accept. In this life, someone is made up for the love they lacked for my sister. And the love they poured into me to make up for Lumina is enough to soothe the harm they caused me. When I'm discharged from the hospital, I want to visit Sister Lumina. Mom held my hand and immediately replied, "Okay, Jocelyn. If you want, you can change your name. We won't force you to live in someone else's shadow anymore. Whatever you look like, you're our dearest daughter." Actually, I don't dislike this name. It was Lumina who gave me the chance to be adopted. I hope I can always remember her existence. After the college entrance examination, Aurora was admitted to various prestigious universities as the top scorer. My body gradually recovered well, and I could be discharged from the hospital in half a month. Aurora and I made an appointment to visit the graves together on the day of our parents' Memorial Day. And we'll get together during every festival after that. Even though we once took different paths, we eventually came together. Having overcome hardships, we will bloom even more brightly. End.